What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. So we are officially through week 17, the penultimate week of the season, and with it we had a lot of official clinches. So heading into the final week, we have a better idea of what business is settled, or more importantly, what business we still have to settle in that final week. So we have a lot to talk about. We had a lot that happened this past week, so without further ado, let's get into it. First up on the docket was our Christmas triple header, and first up on Christmas was the Dallas Cowboys taking down the Washington Commanders in Washington by a score of 32-23. And I think this was about as interesting as a game between two eliminated teams can be. I mean, Deebo Samuel did the cool thing. He made a cool play, and I guess Bill finally showed that potential he had coming in now that he's already ruined my fantasy season, but that's about it. That's all that happened. As for Dallas, it's a good overall win. Offense and defense both look good. It's just, too little too late since they were already eliminated last week. A win doesn't do much or say anything that much different about this team's offseason and what I think they need to do this offseason. As for Washington, it's the same case. They played hard, but they still lost, and it's the same for Washington. This game just doesn't change anything at all for what they need to do and what I think they need to do this offseason. Then continuing through the Christmas slate, we had the Minnesota Vikings taking down the Detroit Lions 23-10. And I think this was the blowout we expected on Christmas, just in the exact opposite way. With the loss, the Lions have mathematically been eliminated from playoff contention. As for Minnesota, the entire offense, I think, owes the defense a steak dinner because the Vikings just won a professional football game despite only having 3 net passing yards. 3. That's 3 more than you, the viewer. The Minnesota Vikings had 3 more yards than you did on Christmas Day. And I can't say much like I usually do on McCarthy going forward, since obviously he didn't play in this game. So all the praise goes towards the Minnesota defense finally showing a form similar to that of last year's team. As for Detroit, this has been the most under the radar collapse of the NFL this season, just with all of the other collapses that have been going on. But really, this team has fallen off a cliff. They started 6-3, and they are now officially eliminated on Christmas Day. Surprisingly, it was the offense that let them down today. They had 6 turnovers. Aside from fixing the defense, the Lions need to learn how to play complementary football because it's been their undoing 2, and I would even argue 3 years in a row. Detroit's in a tough spot. They looked so promising a couple years ago. They had a young core, but now obviously they're eliminated on Christmas just a couple years later, 1 year after winning 15 games and securing the 1 seed. It's tough times in Detroit. And then our nightcap for Christmas was the Denver Broncos traveling to Kansas City and taking down the Chiefs by a score of 20-13. And I had to remind myself that this was a Thursday night game. It just didn't really feel like it because, it was Christmas and we had 2 games before this because, good God, it was ugly. And with this win and some help, which we'll get into in a little bit, the Denver Broncos have clinched the AFC West for the first time since 2015. As for Denver, I really want to think that the offensive performance was due to it, again, being a short week on the road in the division and very shorthanded. A lot of key players were out in this one, and I really hope they prove that sentiment next week. I really do. But once again, they put up when it matters most, and Bo Nix yet again led them to a win in crunch time. As for Kansas City, all things considered, I think it could have been a lot worse with a third-string quarterback losing by 7. Could be a lot worse. There's not a lot I can say, though, about this team because, again, a 5-game skid is a 5-game skid. It's simple as that. Then moving to Saturday, we had the Houston Texans taking down the LA Chargers by a score of 22-16. And this is a game with 2 of the worst and most injured O-lines in football right now. So, unsurprisingly, it turned into a defensive grudge match. With the result, the Texans have clinched their spot in the playoffs this year. The Indianapolis Colts have been eliminated from playoff contention, and the LA Chargers have been eliminated from the AFC West race. As for Houston, they started out white hot. They scored 2 straight long touchdowns to open up the game to go up 14-0 quickly, but it was a frustrating struggle from the 3rd drive onward. They were undisciplined, and offensively, they were just stagnant. But thank God for that incredible defense. The more I watch it, the more I think it can be a championship-winning defense. And I'm not talking about, the Legion of Boom, no disrespect to them, but they had a pretty decent offense on the other side to complement their amazing play. I mean, this Texans defense is more like the 2000 Ravens or 2015 Broncos, where it can single-handedly carry this team to a championship. As for LA, look, Justin Herbert just can't win big games. Whether it's his fault today in this game is up for debate. He just objectively does not win them so far in his career. The Texans coming out and punching them in the mouth were just 2 big blows this defense and the Chargers team as a whole couldn't recover from, even though their defense did end up playing very well from that point onward in the game. And once again, the Chargers have a pretty good team. They have a pretty decent, deep, balanced team, but they're going to have have to go on the road in the playoffs. The last wildcard Super Bowl winner was the 2020 Bucks, and before that, it was the 2010 Packers. So, take that as you will. And then our second game in the Saturday doubleheader was the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Lambeau and taking down the Packers 41-24. And the battle of backup quarterbacks was a surprisingly fun and high-octane game to watch. The Ravens have stayed alive in the playoff race, and the Packers are now locked into the 7th seed in the NFC. As for Baltimore, the scrutiny for not giving Derrick Henry the ball last week down the stretch and in crunch time was well-deserved. It's safe to say Baltimore corrected us so. Derrick Henry finished the night with 36 carries for 216 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the Ravens are somehow still alive as we head into the final week of the season. We'll get into that in a little bit here. As for Green Bay, Malik Willis gave this team everything he had, but this was a brutal performance by the defense and by the O-line. So now, for the 3rd straight year, the Packers will be the 7th seed. They are locked in there. They cannot move. They will be traveling to whoever is the 2 seed this year. And they are the quote-unquote last team in, per se, even though they've had their spot locked up for a little while now. Considering that they're the 7th seed for the 3rd year in a row, I'm honestly starting to get pretty sick of the constant Packer hype every offseason that they're legit contenders, because they've clearly shown that their ceiling is the wild card. Maybe one playoff win if they get a good matchup, but that's it, nothing more. So they're probably going to get hyped up as a serious Super Bowl contender again this upcoming offseason heading into the next season. And once again, I'm not going to buy it until this team shows me any different. Then moving to Sunday, we had the Seattle Seahawks taking down the Carolina Panthers by a score of 27-10. This is a very boring and slow game, which is honestly probably exactly how Seattle wanted it the more I think about it. The result has set up a win and clinch for both teams next week, the division for both, and for Seattle's case, the 1 seed as well. As for Seattle, they relied on their defense this week, and I think anyone in their right mind would also do so with the defense that they sport, especially this late in the season. And with the win, Seattle maintains control of the 1 seed and clinches it with a win in the finale next week. As for Carolina, I said this past week in the preview that even keeping it close could generate some momentum for them against a very good Seattle team. I really just don't think that's what happened in this game. I think the Hubbard fumble immediately after that huge interception in the end zone really did them in. Now, after a letdown loss, it's win or probably go home for the Panthers in the finale. We'll get into that in a little bit. And continuing through the 1 o'clock slate, we had the Cleveland Browns taking down the Pittsburgh Steelers 13-6. Those dogs up in Cleveland really pulled off the upset. So now that Ravens-Steelers game next week will be more than meaningful. As for Cleveland, everyone knew that this Cleveland defense was good, and they finally got to show it this week because they were flat out dominant. We're just not going to talk about the offense for the Browns just to keep it nice and keep it positive. So, good win, Cleveland. As for Pittsburgh, heading in, the division is yours if you just beat a 3-win team. Good Lord. Unfortunately, the stereotype that all that Tomlin cares about is his winning season and his 9-win seasons. And with how they performed this past Sunday, that looks very true, unfortunately. This team was just flat out not ready to go, and they were not ready to play this game. So now it's win or go home versus Baltimore next week for Pittsburgh. Then continuing through the 1 o'clock slate, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars taking down the Indianapolis Colts 23-17. And I think this was somewhat surprisingly a low-scoring game. And the Jaguars don't clinch anything per se with this game, but they still control the South and still have a shot at the 1 seed heading into the final week next week. As for Jacksonville, this was somewhat of a letdown after a huge win last week after that big win in Denver, but they did what good teams do. They found a way to win this game despite not really having their best in this game. And with the Houston win on Saturday, a win themselves was all the more important, which they ended up getting. So what this means is they win and clinch the division next week in the finale, and with some help, they could potentially get the 1 seed. As for Indianapolis, there's still not much I have to say about this Colts team. It's just really sad to see how this season has come to a close for them. After that hot start, they are now 8-8 and officially eliminated before the final week. And continuing through the 1 o'clock slate, you had the Miami Dolphins taking down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20-17. This game sucked. Like, flat out. I wouldn't talk about this game, but it does have fairly major playoff implications. As for Miami, good win. You mess up your draft position, but good win. As for Tampa Bay, you can't even beat a backup quarterback. So luckily, Seattle bailed you out and still gave you a fighting chance heading into the final week. But good God, how far this team has fallen. Now the Bucks have the most undeserved winner-go-home game next week against the Panthers, pending some help. Again, we will get into that in a little bit here. Then moving to the 4 o'clock slate, like I said, we had a whopping 2 games in the 4 o'clock slate. So I guess we'll talk about what was supposed to be the good one that actually kind of sucked, but has fairly major playoff implications. The Philadelphia Eagles took down the Buffalo Bills 13-12. Why do all these games this week suck? Like, we're coming down to the end here, and I'm telling myself now that I shouldn't complain because in about 4 months, 3 or 4 months, I would kill to watch a game like this when I got nothing to do. But in the moment, these games just suck. And the Eagles ended up being the team that did not lose this game, but we'll leave it at that. As for Philadelphia, like I said, they didn't lose, and accustomed in the biannual collapse, they definitely played to do so. Me and you, yes, you, the viewer, had as many passing yards in the second half as Jalen Hurts. Yeah, so they may be able to rest their starters. They can still play for seeding, just depending on what happens with Chicago. But I think that might trump it because, my God, they need some rest. They need a break because they just look like shit. As for Buffalo, it was a classic. No thanks. We don't want to win this game performance by the Bills that we've gotten fairly often these past few years. And combined with the Patriots win earlier on Sunday, the Bills can no longer win the East. They will have to go on the road in the playoffs and will most likely close out the Ralph next weekend. Then on Sunday night, we had the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Chicago Bears by a score of 42-38. This was one of the most fun games of the season, and it seems, in contrast to most of the fun games we had this season, this one was also a very important one between two good teams. The Bears can no longer get the 1 seed, and the 49ers are playing for it and the division next week. As for San Francisco, the offense looked as efficient as it did last Monday in Indy. They completely carved up what has been a pretty stout Chicago defense all year. However, my main concern with the 49ers arose maybe just a little bit in this game. Their defense is very short-handed, and they themselves got carved up by Chicago. And they remind me a little too much of the Lions last year. A bad matchup, especially a bad matchup on the defensive side of the ball, could end up ending their season. But obviously, they have a very big one against Seattle next week for the division and the 1 seed, and it is a home game for them, which is a serious advantage. As for Chicago, they've gotten better and better in these big games down the stretch that they aren't used to playing just with their core, but they're just still not quite there yet. But I do think, much like Denver's loss last week, if they play their cards right, this could be a good thing for them, could be the best thing that happened to them, but I won't deny that losing out on the 1 seed definitely stinks and is definitely a tough blow. Then on Monday night, we had the Atlanta Falcons pulling off the upset. They took down the LA Rams by a score of 27-24, and Atlanta's actually going to do it. They are going to give us the 3-way tie in the NFC South. As for Atlanta, despite everything this season, despite all the mostly bad but some good, you still have Bijan Robinson, so good win. As for Los Angeles, I don't know if Seattle figures something out. I don't know if the Rams aren't playing well. I don't know if it's a mix of both. I am really concerned about this team. Now, they have to go on the road in the playoffs, and while I think they match up well versus Philly, their likely opponent in the first round, I really don't know about the rest of their playoff run. They've shown some very concerning trends. Like I said, my big concern with this team is they don't really know what to do when the other team punches back, which has been made very clear these past 2 weeks. So, I don't really know what the Rams. If I'm an NFC fan, they just don't really scare me that much anymore. And before we head into our final preview of the season, let's take one final preview at the playoff picture before we get the official one after this upcoming Sunday. First off, in the AFC, the top looks about the same. The Denver Broncos are still the 1 seed, the New England Patriots are the 2 seed, the Jacksonville Jaguars are the 3 seed, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are the 4 seed. The Houston Texans are the 5 seed, the LA Chargers are the 6 seed, and the Buffalo Bills are the 7 seed. And our one team in the hunt is still the Baltimore Ravens, and we know pretty much whether or not they will be in the hunt or in that 4 seed by week's end. Shifting over to the NFC, same case there. The Seattle Seahawks are the 1 seed, the Chicago Bears are the 2 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles are the 3 seed, and the Carolina Panthers are the 4 seed. The San Francisco 49ers are the 5 seed, the LA Rams are the 6 seed, and the Green Bay Packers are the 7 seed. Take a good look at both of these because they both could look vastly different once we get the official shakeup by Sunday's end. And with that, we have reached the preview segment for the final week of the 2025 regular season. For 14 teams, that means this is the final chance to tune up and the final chance to improve where they are in the playoff standing before they get ready for the 4-week sprint to a potential Super Bowl championship. For the other 18, it means this is the end of the line for 2025 and the 2025 season. And it all starts on Saturday. Got a doubleheader and 2 massive games. First up is the Carolina Panthers traveling to Tampa to take on the Buccaneers. And it could have been the NFC South Championship, but the Falcons have decided to involve themselves down the stretch here, which I think is very appropriate and very fitting for this very unserious division. If the Panthers win, they clinch. Simple as that, over and done with. If the Buccaneers win, they're going to need the Falcons to end up losing to the Saints on Sunday, because if the Falcons do win on top of a Buccaneers win, we'd have a 3-way tiebreaker at 8-9, which would go to the Carolina Panthers since they ended up sweeping the Falcons. Then our second one on Saturday is even bigger. It is the Seattle Seahawks traveling to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. This game is not only the NFC West Championship game, it is also the 1 seed championship game. Whoever wins this game will not only take the NFC West, they will take the 1 seed and have the NFC playoffs run through their house, and the loser will have to go on the road. If you can think all the way back to week 1, the 49ers took the first of these 2 matchups, so I think given how long ago it was, it won't really have that much of an impact on how this game goes. Forgot to mention in this preview segment, I'm just keeping it simple. I'm going through every game that can and will have implications on the playoff picture. With that said, moving into Sunday, first up we've got the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. And the Texans' path is simple in concept. They just have to win, and they need a Jaguars loss in order to take the AFC South. And who are the Jags playing? Well, it's Tennessee Titans, so easier said than done. Moving through Sunday, we've got the Tennessee Titans traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. For the Jags, it's even more simple. Just beat the 3-win Titans at home. The division is theirs, and if they get some help in the late window, they could potentially even get the 1 seed. Then moving to the 4 o'clock window, we got the New York Jets traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And the Bills are in a bit of a pickle. They're in a 3-way tie with themselves, the Chargers, and the Texans in the wild card right now. So right now they sit in the 7 seed, and by Sunday's end, they could be the 5, 6, or 7 seed, depending on how their game goes and how some of the other games go. And I feel like it's worth mentioning this is potentially the last game at the Ralph, so it should be a rocking atmosphere before it is closed down for good. Then continuing to the 4 o'clock window, we've got the LA Chargers traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos. And for the Chargers, it's the same case as Buffalo. They're in that 3-way tie in the division. They could be the 5, 6, or 7 seed by Sunday's end. For the Broncos, it's fairly simple. If they win, they clinch the 1 seed, get that first round bye, and the AFC playoffs run through Mile High. If they lose, that invites potentially dropping down to as low as the 3 seed. Then continuing through the 4 o'clock window, we've got the Miami Dolphins traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. And the Patriots, it's much of the same win, and they clinch at the very least the 2 seed, potentially the 1. If they get some help, they lose, they could drop as low as the 3 seed. And on Sunday night, the final game of the 2025 NFL regular season is a big one. It is the AFC North Championship. The Baltimore Ravens travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Whoever wins this game takes the North, gets the 4 seed, and gets a home playoff game between either one of the Bills, Chargers, or Texans. The loser goes into off-season mode. But that is it for me. If you have any thoughts of your own on this past week, the week ahead, feel free to drop them in the comments. Any thoughts on what I said this past week, the week ahead, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you like what you're seeing, feel free to like and subscribe. It is completely optional, but greatly appreciated. That is it for me. Enjoy this final Week 18 of the regular season, and I'll see you in the next one.